Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, welcome to our Tuesday Night Podcast. You see, I am back in studio as Joe is back from his vacation, and I told him that he could never go away again. As long as it's not, he can, as long as it's not on a Tuesday night. I'm kidding, obviously, but if you were watching our show last week, it was I was the one that was bringing in and out the slides and doing crazy stuff, and Joe was still working. I have to give him 100% credit. He's never missed a Tuesday night podcast, even when he's away. But anyway, real special show for you all tonight, for me also, because I'm sharing the screen with one of our viewers, Lisa. She is a professor and reached out to me saying, hey, Todd, I watch your show. And she had watched, I guess, one of our podcasts where we were talking about teachers. And I don't know, it may have even been the podcast with Danielle DiMartino Booth. And she's shaking her head yes. And I think that probably fired her up, because Danielle was basically talking about how teachers could be easily replaced by AI. I don't know that she was saying that exactly, but that's kind of like what a lot of the audience felt in some of the comments. But we're going to she's here to set the record straight tonight and talk about, her stance on student debt, student loan debt, and she believes it's predatory. So we'll get the firsthand her opinion on that as somebody that works in the trenches. So, and then also John Hoffman, he's back with us tonight. John is he's a broker, Y Rent, a real estate company, and he's in Chicago. So we were talking about the battle of the crime a little bit before the show started.
Number one.
So I was, he was asking me how Maryland was in Baltimore, and I said, well, our crime never seems to let us down. The news is always something going on.
Here, right?
Yeah, and he said, wait a minute, man, I'm in Chicago. And then Lisa said, well, I'm in LA. So I said, well, I guess I'll have to humble myself here tonight. But anyway, we'll start with you, Lisa. Guys, it's a live show. Comment your questions. You can just send them on in. And like you always do, we'll try and answer them. Lisa only has about an hour with us tonight. So unfortunately, she has prior engagements. She will need to jump off. But don't be sad, because that's when we'll start talking about what we see in the housing market, more specifically with John, as he specializes in foreclosures and bank-owned properties, as delinquencies are rising. And there's no surprise as to what's happening. If you guys, it's your first time joining us, I'm your host, Todd Sachs. I'm a real estate broker here in Maryland. We have an amazing broker network, just like John. He's in our broker network all over the country. You can go to sachsrealty.com, click on the map of the U.S. if you're not in Maryland, and you can check out our great referral network. I have agents that reach out to me all the time, and I have to tell a lot of them that they're not allowed to be in our network in a very nice way, because either one or two things: they're not full-time, they don't have enough transactions under their belt, and they don't have the Google or internet reviews that or feel the same way that we do when it comes to the housing market. So we are kind of picky, but John, you passed the muster. But Lisa, let's start with you. Introduce yourself to our fantastic audience.
Hi, and I just wanted to thank you so much again, Todd, for having me. It's a real honor to be able to engage in conversation with one of my real life YouTube mentors. So thank you for having me. And John, I look forward to getting to know you and your perspectives in this conversation.
You too.
I am a professor in Southern California, and I'm also an advocate for student debt relief. And I am a frequent contributor to different news media on the convergence of overlapping crises of student loan debt, low wages, and housing unaffordability on the education community.
Is that all? I'm kidding. I mean, that's definitely will probably keep you busy because I don't think there will be too many people that disagree. What's it, 1.74 trillion in active student loan debt right now, I think, in the United States,
Right.
and of which 1.6 trillion of it, guess who has that paper? Our
Yeah.
federal government.
Government.
So the private sector, very small portion of that. We'll dive into it. I can't wait to ask you some questions as we move forward. But John, go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself.
John Hoppen, Y Rent Real Estate Company out in Batavia, Illinois. I'm predominantly an REO broker, which is real estate owned, foreclosures, whatnot. Pretty much do everything out here. Been doing it since 1994, so it's been whacking it around a lot. So business is good. It's a little bit slow right now with the back to school stuff going on, but it's been a pretty good year.
Well, John, I encourage you. Let's be asking Lisa some questions too. I
do
said
have a question right off the bat.
Let's go.
Isn't the payments for the student loans are on hold for like credit wise, right? Right now, doesn't that kick in like next month?
Yeah. So in October.
In October. Okay. I don't know why that dawned on me, but I'm like, yeah, I got to ask her that because I know, and that's going to be an onslaught because I think a lot of people aren't even paying these right now just because they really don't have to,
Right. And they don't have the money.
Right. Well, yeah, bigger issue, right?
So much of their income. And I think we are going to see unfortunately, we're going to see a wave of foreclosures that will happen simultaneously with that.
Yeah, we really haven't seen much of anything in terms of foreclosures, but the thing to keep in mind is everybody's in forbearance. I've been saying it on this show, I've said it before, you're either making your payments on time or you're in forbearance. There's no foreclosure in the middle there right now because they don't want the blood in the streets, I mean, there's, Todd, I was on a show with Todd, a while ago, and, I had a property that the guy had done 2 loan mods on, and the property was falling apart by the time we got to it, 5 years later. But anyways, yeah,
we can probably pull up a video of that, Joe. If we'll give Joe a couple seconds, maybe he can produce something there. We can show people what you're talking about.
To follow up on what you're saying, Lisa, it's like, yeah, it's going to be a collision of, all these messes going on at the same time.
Somebody's email is going off. Is that us, Joe, or is that somebody
That's
else?
you guys.
All right. Not sure. All right. Well, I want to start off, really get you fired up, Lisa, because one of the things that I like to do is put polls out there for our audience, and we want to kind of bring it out early on because we want people to have an opportunity to cruise on over to the poll and vote, and we'll check it out periodically. And it has to do with student debt, and it has to do with student debt relief. And so I put a simple question out there that said, should student loans be forgiven? And let's take a look at what we have. So here we are. Student debt, well, no, I'm sorry. Did I screw up? I asked if student debt was predatory, and 76% said yes, 25% no. I had in there, should they be forgiven? And I had too many characters in there, and they wouldn't let me post it. But maybe you guys can comment in whether they should be forgiven or not. But and I think this, Lisa, will start you off. And why don't we start with giving us a little bit of foundation on student debt?
Right. So at this point, there are approximately 45 million Americans with student loan debt. And this is a multi-generational crisis ranging from people in college now all the way through senior citizens. In fact, senior citizens are the largest growing cohort of distressed student loan borrowers, and they're having their Social Security checks garnished. Student loan debt, right? So contrary to a lot of what the mainstream media puts out, there are more student loan borrowers over the age of 50 than under the age of 25. And they owe far more despite having borrowed far less. And that is really what it boils down to is the removal of bankruptcy protections from student loan debt.
Wow.
And that's in essence what makes them predatory.
What's the average loan size? Do you know? I mean, just in general?
So it depends on the field, but I can talk about the education community, which is approximately $56,000.
Okay. I think nationwide it's 37,000 on the federal side. Is the average debt. But let's pull up at Wikipedia, and I just want to bring this up here. I have a couple things highlighted here. I want to just kind of show you. It says that, Joe, am I pulling this up or are you pulling it up? There we go. All right. It says with notable exceptions, and this is what Lisa was talking about, student loans must be repaid in contrast to other forms of financial and such aid, such as scholarships, which are not repaid, and grants, which rarely have to be repaid. Student loans may be discharged through bankruptcy, but this is difficult. So, Lisa, are you familiar with, I know one of the things that when we first spoke, you had said that, that basically it was unconstitutional to not be able to wipe out student debt in a bankruptcy or something like that.
Right. When the founding fathers, were first, putting together the articles, the right to declare bankruptcy was written before even the right to bear arms and the right to coin currency. It was that important because we were being enslaved by British merchants, and that was keeping, Americans, strapped in a predatory cycle of debt. And that was something that the founding fathers wanted to avoid at all costs. And what has become, over the years is a situation where student loan debt has been uniquely stripped of the constitutional right of bankruptcy. This is a unique exception from all other forms of consumer debt. And this is really the origin of the tremendous student loan debt bubble that we're seeing today.
Why do you think, I can remember through the years, I mean, I've been a contractor forever. A lot of my clients early on, they would get loans for services and having work done, and talking, for the last 30 plus years, speaking with people in lending, they always say, like student loan debt, if you're delinquent on student loans, it's like the biggest, mark on your credit report, because, there's a lot of schools of thought that says, look, if you're not paying back your student loan debt, you're a deadbeat in the eyes of the creditors, right? That's the way it used to be looked at, right? You obviously look at it from a different perspective, but what I really want to talk about is, where did we get into this expensive education that we have today? I mean, how did that all start? Because, if we're talking about pushing kids to go to have a formal education beyond high school, grade school, there are other choices, but certainly not the choices that they're being pressured by their peers to, go to, certain universities, and the costs are just exorbitant. And these kids, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. I mean, a lot of them go to college. They're not working in the field that they obtained their degree. How many of these kids went to college and dropped out? We have some stats that we can look at, but I mean, where did this whole educational system go wrong?
Well, if you want my own opinion on it, I think when we look at, the sort of post-World War II, rebuilding of America, and, when you have the creation of the GI Bill, and, you have all of the servicemen coming back and them going to school, and then subsequently them, getting into homes, you have, I think, the origin story of the availability of college, really, to what would be the foundation of the middle class. And I think that is the ideal that we've seen developed over the decades. And, along with that, I would say the goalpost that a college education would lead to a solid middle class life, which was at that time, defined as the house with the white picket fence. Somewhere along the line, when the government and when, private lenders understood that they could make a lot of money off of higher education, that's when we saw really the financialization of higher education and the removal of bankruptcy brought with it the removal of truth in lending laws and statutes of limitations. And that's really when we saw the lenders begin to have a license to steal. And that the end result of that is we see borrowers who have been paying consistently over decades, having far exceeded paying the amount that they originally borrowed, but had paid much more than that and still owe on top of that. In fact, I have a colleague who is in her 60s. She had originally borrowed about $29,000 in the late 80s, repaid $100 and something thousand, and still owes another $80,000.
Wow.
How is that socially acceptable? And then how then can we enter into the conversation of the bad borrower narrative versus the corrupted system narrative? And what it means.
When did I know that, and I pulled some things up here. I don't know this stuff off the top of my head. I'd like to think that I'm that smart, but I did a little bit of research, and it says that federal student loans were first offered in 1958 under the National Defense Education Act, NDEA. They were available only to select categories of students, such as those studying engineering, science, or education. And I guess from there, let's kind of take us back, because I want to understand the foundation here. How did kids afford college prior to the government funding $1.6 trillion in student debt? How did they pay for college before?
Right. So if we actually go back to the Higher Education Act of 1965, when then President Johnson signed the Higher Education Act, he signed this act with the stipulation that these loans would be free of interest. And because of that, that would make these loans much more accessible to a middle class family. And that therein lies I think a real key component of the answer to your question is the interest, right? And we see, after that, how interest started to be added onto student loan debt, even though they were supposed to never accumulate interest.
What year was that? Do you know when they started to do that?
I don't have it offhand, but you can see the rise in student loan debt really in the 80s. Really, I would say with President Reagan. That's really when we see when there was significant funding removed from higher education. First, at the state level, at least in California, and then in the national level. That's when we really see a very large rise in the debt crisis. And then, of course, student loan debt, increased out from the boomer generation to the sort of Gen X and Xennial, which is sort of my generation, an increase in the cost of higher education by about 55%.
And leaving out the interest portion of that, when the government started doing more purchasing of these student loans, obviously that made it easier for students to get loans.
Right.
Isn't that
because
Sally
the
Mae?
government.
Is that Sally Mae that buys those or backs them?
Right. It used to be Sally Mae.
But now it's everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone's in on it now.
Yeah. The Department of Education now.
But the government is backing these $1.6 trillion now in student loans. Do you think that helped the universities raise their tuitions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you have an unlimited supply of funding, then, this goes back to, this is connected to housing as well. When you have something in unlimited supply, you can, the price goes as high as, the market will bear.
Hey, Lisa, too, it's like all these stadiums, these rehabbing stadiums, building new stadiums, it's like the sky's the limit for these places,
Absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of waste that goes on in higher education funding. And that is because of the removal of bankruptcy protections. The students are left holding the bag and the universities have really no skin in the game.
In March of 2020, federal student loan borrowers received a temporary relief from student loan payments during the COVID-19 pandemic. This relief was subsequently extended multiple times, and it's set to expire at the end of June 2023. So I think they pushed that to what? October. The payments, the interest started to accrue again. I think it was in October of 23.
Right.
And then basically what they said, how John kind of opened up the conversation was the government said, well, we're not going to let them put these bad marks on your credit report that you haven't been paying, but we encourage you to start paying them because this October that sunsets and now everything will be due. There was a poll that was, according to this article's in Newsweek, polling conducted by the Harris poll for NerdWallet found that 31% of Americans, 43 million student loan debtors, have slowed down payments and hope they will be reduced or forgiven by the federal government. Of the 600 borrowers surveyed between July 16 to 18 this year, nearly 1 in 4, or 23%, said they had stopped paying their loans back completely. I guess the question is, and this is going to dive into the bigger picture, and we're not done talking about the student debt because I'm sure our audience has a bunch of questions, but I guess the question that I have here is, why haven't, for the last 4 years, certainly 3 years, that these students have not had to pay a payment on their student loan debt and they're not accruing any interest during that period of time? Why wouldn't they be buying that debt down interest free?
Right. Well, it depends on who you ask, right? There are people who definitely did take advantage of the payment pause to pay down, student loan debt. But then there are other people, in public service, for example, such as myself, who, had hoped to be able to use that time, and we were able to use that time to build towards public service loan forgiveness, which is a program that has historically been an abject failure. And only of recent does it have an 11% success rate. So, if you're looking at, people in public service, which are teachers, firefighters, social workers, nurses, these are people who were promised, cancellation of their student loan balance and had never received it. All of these.
And when were they promised that? When
the program began in 2007. And so the idea of this program is that public servants would work in their field for 10 years. And then after the 10-year period, the remainder of their student loan balance would be canceled. And so that would have made the first cohort eligible in 2017, which never happened.
None of it's happened? None of it's gone on?
Well, Now it has. There have been a lot of improvements made to the program, over the past 4 years. But up until the past 4 years, the program had, less than a 1% success rate. And again, that comes back to bankruptcy protections, right? Because absent bankruptcy protections, there is no incentive uh, for there to be truth, honesty, and transparency in the process.
You're saying you can't wipe the debt out, so we'll charge you whatever we want. We'll give it to you. You don't have to make a payment until you graduate. You get a job. And so you're saying that they were lured into this, and then a lot of these public servants bought into the philosophy, hey, I'm going to work in my career for substandard wages. I mean, look, I know these teachers. I know, I don't necessarily, I see firefighters here making a decent wage. Some of them a really good wage. I may get blown up in the comments here where people disagree with me, but I do know a couple firefighters, and they have, they work hours that allows them to do all kinds of side gigs in their own business, whether it's cutting grass. And they get great benefits and things like that. But I agree, our teachers, and this is kind of a hot subject because, I won't put teachers in the category of realtors, but there are a lot of people that believe that teaching can be done now through AI. So I think a lot of, and I know you disagree with that. I disagree with it. I don't think that we should have, teachers or students or kids being taught by AI. They can be lied to more than they are now with narratives and really not know the truth, certainly not know any history or the Constitution for that matter. And, I think there's a lot of good reason, but we've really crushed our educational system. I know a lot of people that used to be teachers, and that's a tragedy. I can't tell you how many people I interact with. They were educators. They were teachers, elementary school, high school, middle school, and they got out. They saw the politics and the action. They don't agree with Common Core. They felt that it stripped, I know some that, have brought students at their house to teach them, have provided them with clothes because their parents didn't or refused to or feel that everybody else should provide for them but themselves. I mean, these are touchy subjects, but if we're going to talk about it, we got to lay it out on the table. I mean, this is, there's a lot of, it's a mess. I mean, why wouldn't we be taking care of our school teachers? This is like important, guys. Look, here's the problem. For a lot of parents, this is a daycare program, right? You drop your kids off to school so you can have both people out of the house working. That's what's happening, right? Now, not for everywhere, but I'm just saying they learn a lot of stupid stuff. There's a lot of, we're not teaching them financial literacy. We're not teaching them about career opportunities. Why would so many of them go to college and drop out? Why would so many of them change their majors after they rack up $100,000 in debt?
They don't even have PE anymore either in the schools.
Yeah.
There's not even PE or the arts, the metal shop,
Exactly.
I mean, that's what we had in high school. All that stuff's gone, so what do we
100%.
teach?
Wood shop. I had wood shop in high school. That's where I started learning carpentry. And, in my senior year, I remember our teacher, it was his last year of teaching. He was retiring. And we built a modular building inside. We called it a shed. I think he called it a shed to get it passed by the Board of Education. It was a nice building, and we panelized it. We took it out. We erected it at his house. I mean, we learned how to do other things besides going to, a university where you come out $200,000 in debt. Right. And I'm not knocking it.
University don't graduate either. So.
Exactly. Right. So, it's a hot topic. I'll tell you how hot it is.
Hey, Lisa,
February.
What's the dropout rate of freshmen? Isn't it like 55% or something?
Yeah. And, it's about that. But when we think about the statistic that approximately half of college students do not graduate, and of the half that do graduate, half of those people go into fields that have no relation to their major. So, I mean, there's a lot that's wrong with higher education, and finance is a big piece of that. And
So here in February 23, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Biden versus Nebraska concerning President Biden's order to cancel student loan debt for an estimated 40 million debtors. In June of 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Nebraska to block Biden's plan to forgive federal student loans. Now, you may not like me after I say this, but I don't believe that we should forgive 40 million student loans. I'm just putting it out there. I don't, I look, I agree with what you're saying as far as we're not, we're not taking care of our teachers and our public servants the way that they should be. And if we're telling them that their debt should be forgiven if they work there in 10 years, and we should honor that. They're buying into that. That's one of the reasons why they signed up and why they went into that career. But I do not advocate for us to constantly make people that make financial commitments to let them off the hook from those financial commitments. I just don't agree with it.
I support that, Todd. And, I think something to really think about is the reintroduction of the, back into the conversation of returning bankruptcy protections back to student loan debt as a real workable compromise between both sides of the aisle. I mean, student loan debt should not be a partisan issue. This is an issue that affects 45 million Americans across 4 generations. And another sort of lesser known reality is that over half of student loan borrowers are Republican or independent. So I think there's a lot of falsehood going on into the narrative about who really holds student loan debt, and whether it's in fact the image that is sort of put out there really by the lending industry, that it's sort of the leftist blue-haired underwater basket weaving major, trying to suck up the resources of, middle America, which is really not the case. And that's why I think the conversation around bankruptcy is so important, especially at this time going into an election year.
I 100% agree with you as well on that. I think that you should not be able to single out and, say that, hey, you can go bankrupt, you can wipe all these debts out, but you can't wipe out your student debt. I completely agree with you on that. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that our country is ran by bankers. Mm-hmm. When you look at a lot of the policymakers, the Federal Reserve, I mean, they're bankers, they're central bankers. And, what do bankers do? They make money on debt, right? I mean, that's what happens. I mean, they borrow it ridiculously over the last 15 years. They have been able to borrow it almost free or at free. They're not required to take any of our money and put it in the vault anymore. I mean, they completely grab our money. They take $1,000 and they make that we deposit in our bank account and make $10,000 in loans without having the $1,000 to back it up. Can you imagine having a business that way? Right. I mean, what kind of a business is that? It's one that is tolerated here. That's the kind of business it is.
Definitely.
Right. To that point, Todd, why is it, let's ask the question, why is it that, a bank will lend an 18-year-old, $100,000 to go to college, but won't lend that same 18-year-old $10,000 to start a business? It's because of the removal of bankruptcy protections, right? Because they know no matter what, that 18-year-old will have that debt for a lifetime, and it's not dischargeable.
Well, you can go get an SBA loan, but that's like, having a stethoscope shoved. Well, I mean, it's, they do have programs out there, but try and get them. I mean, it's like, I can talk about that. So what are you seeing? I mean, let's kind of tie this all together, middle class. What do you think? On its way out?
Absolutely. I so wish this wasn't the case, but I would say unless and until we decide as a society that we want to value all of society's contributors, all of those who keep our society functioning on a day-to-day basis, unless we sort of return to a sense of community rather than a sense of isolationist suburban, choices, we're going to be left with a situation where, um, public servants, just, teachers, social workers, nurses, are being driven further and further out of our communities because of the confluence of student loan debt, cost of housing, and comparatively low wages. And the end result is that our communities won't be sustainable anymore. So what's needed really, and sort of getting into a segue from a real estate perspective, is the missing middle housing.
We know that. Housing's a wreck right now.
The solution lies in the, I would say, almost Marshall Plan-esque level of middle income housing that has so deteriorated over the decades, and I would say most precipitously after the crash. But this missing middle housing will be what restores our communities, or lack thereof, what continues to destroy our communities.
Hey, Lisa, I have a question for you. Do you know why one of the major contributing factors of why housing is so expensive?
Land. Land is scarce. Land is very expensive. And, there are so many factors that go into cost of, development. But when you make a resource scarce, when you have members of the community who object to any sort of development, that's what drives up costs. And it leaves people who are not able to buy in at that level stuck in a permanent state of rentership.
We got pristine. Back in the day before we had all these crazy zoning rules and regulations, if people wanted to build their house or their family member, on their property, a home, they did it. They brought the community. The Amish still does it. They brought the community in together. They pulled their resources and they built a house. And, but one of the reasons why things are so expensive is the development. So, if you look at the globe, you go take a helicopter ride or a plane ride, there's plenty of green space. Land is not the problem. We are not, and John, to tell you that we do not have a land problem.
No.
Compared to population. What we have is a cruelty problem, right? Where we are an a greed problem, where we're restricting and we're putting so many rules and regulations in place for somebody to build a property or a community, a mixed-use community where you can bring in, enough of, of your shops, your restaurants, your community needs, your community centers, your convenience centers, right? To where you can build houses around that, build a community. The infrastructure cost is just astronomical. And they create this havoc. I don't think that the community would be so objective to it if we weren't creating havoc, if we weren't creating all of these problems and telling people that they're destroying the planet by building a house, for crying out loud. So what we've done is we've pushed these developers. Only a couple of them can afford to do it. The small builders are pushed out. Right? I mean, they're the riskiest. I mean, they try and build a house to make a profit for their family or whatever. They get wiped out because of the cost, the overruns. It's ridiculous. But what happens is the only ones that can play this game are the big builders. So when you're controlling the supply, like you said, right? It's a finite number, right, of housing that is allowed. And we're putting these restrictions on. The only way these builders can recoup their promised profits, because they're saying, hey, if you come in and you do this and you do that and you do all these things, we'll give you the approval for it at a cost that nobody else can do.
Right.
And what they do in exchange is they say, yeah, well, we'll make a little tiny percentage of these houses over here affordable housing, but we have to build these McMansions because if we don't, we can't make money.
Yep.
And I saw an article that was sickening. It said that it's one of these rah-rah articles talking about how, the housing market's so good, it's resilient, it's strong, it's sound, all these things, craziness. Home prices are only going up, folks. If you don't jump in now, you're going to miss the boat. You better sign away, just like that student debt, sign away the 30-year mortgage. But here's the thing. It said that millennials, they want the bigger houses so that they can raise their families. It's the only thing available. And they're enticing them with 3-2-1 buy downs, 30-year lock-in, 5.5 rates. They're burying these people in these loans. They have no idea what they're committing themselves to. Right? The first 7 years, it made nothing might break, but then Katie barred the door.
But
they're gonna run into John.
Todd, most of these too, these new constructions are the cheapest materials you can find. These are breaking down within 3 years. They're having to, carpets are going bad, padding's going bad, lights are breaking. I mean, a lot of these, if you go through these new constructions for $500,000 out here by me, most of the lighting and stuff, you can buy it for $14 at Menards. And this is a $500,000, and the taxes are going to be $12,000. I mean, these people
me and a buddy of mine,
they're getting in with 3.5% down. What could go wrong there?
John, me and a buddy of mine were building a building a couple months ago, side project, evenings, weekends, and of course now, I mean, the tools are great. Right, from the old days, you're not dragging hoses and things like that. Everything's battery operated, which is awesome. It's amazing. But we're putting 5/8 sheathing on, the walls, exterior walls. If you missed a stud, it blew a hole through the 5/8. Not a little hole, but it took a big chunk with it. I mean, you could stick your finger in the hole that you shot and missed I mean, they're junk. I mean, the materials are junk. The adhesives are junk. We're so worried about VOCs. Let me tell you something. I'm not advocating, man, I can see the comments already starting. I'm not advocating for lead paint, but I can tell you what, that stuff was the best. I mean, you never had to paint your house again, right? It's, lead paint is not good for you when you create dust. I do agree with that. But it was a good product. But somewhere. Anyway, let's take some questions.
Hey, Todd, that's another thing, too, is that, the government, they keep coming out and saying, oh, we're going to come up with affordable housing. I mean, it's still going to be $500,000 for affordable housing because of all the regulations. Illinois is just overbearing when you're trying to build anything. I mean, some of the developments we have going here, and they can't sell them now, but for the feds to be saying, oh, we're going to come out with affordable housing, it's impossible. They don't even have a plan for it.
Well, it's subsidized. What they mean is subsidy. They talk about affordable housing from a subsidy standpoint, right? They don't talk about it from, actually cutting red tape. I mean, there is some things. Look, I can pull it up. I've got a fact sheet here. We'll talk about it after Lisa's gone because I want to give her, I know she only has about 15 minutes here, and I want to see if we have any questions for her and comments. And Lisa, I tell you what, I commend you. I think, what you're saying from an educator standpoint. What do you think about AI taking over teaching our kids? Let's ask you that.
So I may be old school, but I am of the frame of mind that there's no substitute for human intelligence. And, AI will continue to provide so many benefits to our society, but at what cost, right? At some point, I think we need to take stock of what the limitations are and what the dangers might be in terms of, I would say, a much broader proliferation of AI into the humanities, especially. I think, in the STEM fields, definitely we're going to see a lot of very useful, very, very innovative AI, but I'm wary of AI in the classroom in terms of any replacement for a teacher. I'm interested in AI in terms of complementing teaching material, augmenting teaching material, but not in terms of actually replacing the educator.
it's a problem in the classrooms now, right? I mean, the students are using it on the phone, their iPads, things like they're trying to, prevent students from having their electronics during the classroom. I mean, are you seeing in universities? I mean, are they leaning on AI versus thinking?
It's interesting. I can spot when a student is using AI I teach foreign languages. So I can actually spot it when a student is going to generate an essay, using AI. It's because depending on what language, there are sort of nuances and, sort of specific rules, idioms that just don't translate word for word. So when I spot it, I'll laugh about it the first time. I won't laugh about it the second time. I think it's more of an issue in middle and high school than it is for the university level.
Well, get ready. They're coming to you. they're coming to you next, right? I mean, that's, I want to talk a little bit about education from a down the road perspective. I can't remember. I believe this was Elon Musk several years ago. I may be wrong, but I know he's doing a lot of different things with his Neuralink, and a lot of, there's a lot of hope in what he's working on as far as people that have physical disabilities, mental disabilities too, dementia, things like that, in repairing a lot of those, damaged neurons. There was something that was said, and I'm pretty sure it was him, but where he was talking, or somebody was talking about the way that we learn. You can only read but so fast.
Right.
You can only talk but so fast. You can only communicate but so fast, right? To where people are like, I have no idea, they tell me all the time I talk slow and my videos are too long, and they 1.5 times the speed or 2 times the speed, where I guess I'm sounding like Mickey Mouse or something. But, we get into it where we want everything now. We want it. So there's the school of thought that says, why would we go through so many years or so many hours of learning and education when we might have these things quicker and be able to implement them faster to get more accomplished? There's that argument. What do you think about that? I mean, with the thought that maybe one day we could take a whole textbook and instantly put it into our brain, because our, Neuralink or whatever that we have, that's our phone monitors, so we don't need to be limited to reading however many words a minute on a page.
I think you've clearly identified the debate between function and humanity, right? Are they compatible? Or should they, remain, I would say, deliberately distinct? I'm very much for innovation in education and the learning process, but not at the extent where we replace our human to human interaction with a model that's going to remove the relationship between educator and student.
I mean, it's a good argument. It's an interesting argument. I'm old school. I lean towards you, but there are probably a lot of people that are listening that are saying, nah, man, I want to learn 16 languages in, 5 minutes. I want to be programmed. I want that chip. I want to be able to do that. And I think it's scary. I mean, there's some weird stuff going on. I said we'd take some questions. Let's do that. All right, Joe, what do we have? All right, here we go. Question. Lisa, this is for you. Is student debt loan figured? I got to expand this thing. I can hardly see it. Is student debt loan figured into credit rating or debt to income ratio?
Right. There's been some newness to that. So I would encourage Charlton Zimmerman, I would encourage you to look up, because I do believe that it is a relatively new thing that student loan debt is actually not counted towards your debt to income ratio when you're applying for a mortgage. But I would encourage you to double check the details on that. It used to be, but I don't believe it is right now.
I think that's another thing that was coming back. I could be wrong. I don't know, but yeah, I thought that was coming back in October along with the other thing.
Possibly. I mean, yeah, definitely. The student loans on your credit score, it's been paused since, until this October, but yes, it will be coming back.
Then I know we have another one here. Student loans are, here we go. Student loans are used for the enrichment of colleges. We were talking about that, not the welfare of students. Look at all the underwater basket weaving classes they teach.
Return bankruptcy protections, return accountability to the colleges, and we'll see a marked drop in tuition and a marked trimming of the fat in sort of classes that are not considered to be sustainable in the future.
Do you think it'd be harder for them to get student loans? I mean, if I know that you can never bankrupt and I will follow you to the end of the earth, if I lend you money on your student debt, I'm just gonna keep coming. I'm going to keep coming, and I'm going to garnish your Social Security check when you get it. It's never going to go away. And then all of a sudden you say, hey, look, you're lending me this money at 18 years old, this $100,000. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to pay you back or not. Life is yet to happen to me. And what do you think that would change if the lender at that point, maybe nothing if it's still the federal government, but what would that change to the people lending you the money for student loans?
If bankruptcy protections were restored, I think first and foremost, we're going to see a real tightening on lending standards when it comes to who, banks will be lending to, or even the government. And then on the other side, we're going to see universities lowering costs, because we're going to see that it's not going to be profitable anymore to, offer a lot of these classes that don't really have much of a return on investment in the long term.
Yeah, I was having a little bit of a debate with someone. We were talking about, they had said, well, you don't need to go to college, so we shouldn't be, encouraging college. And I was thinking, and what we were talking about, I said, have you tried to get a job? I mean, have you looked at job postings? It doesn't matter what it is. They want you to have a college education. I mean, it's crazy, right? So families pressure their kids to get a degree. What's wrong with the trades?
Nothing's wrong with the trades. We need more tradespeople, but tradespeople also have student loan debt, right? So we need to really think about how the role of debt in our society. What is we have to think about why we have debt financed education to begin with, and that's higher education and the trades.
Yeah, I mean, they are starting to monetize that. There is a path to not, to be in the trades. I mean, certain trades where you really do not need to incur debt. I mean, you could go to work for somebody and learn how to do it. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know how many people that I employed through the years that have started their own companies, and you teach them, they get paid to learn. And if they show up every day and they work hard and they're not afraid to do physical work, construction, and then they learn something, and it's there's always somebody that wants something done. I mean, I can remember, I would go into a neighborhood and I would just go house to house to house to house because they would just, the neighbors would tell their friend that this is being done or they're getting that work done. And oh my gosh, let them come and give me a price. I need to have this whole laundry list of things that, my husband said he was going to, eventually get around to, and I want it done. So, I mean, I think that if people, I'm telling everybody, I tell you right now, people don't know how to do anything.
True that.
We don't know how to do anything.
Now too.
What's that?
You see what a plumber makes now too?
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. And I tell you what, HVAC contractors, any kind of trade. I mean, if you could learn how to do tile work and make a fortune putting tile in kitchens and bathrooms, and but yeah, I mean, we put a tremendous amount. I mean, when should we start? I mean, Lisa, you're the educator. When should we start teaching kids about work?
Kindergarten.
Yeah.
Right? The value of work, the value of money. Kindergarten. We see students graduating 12th grade who, can't balance a checkbook. I think we need to begin the foundations of financial literacy, from elementary school up.
Agreed.
I do have to get going, but I wanted to see if there are any last questions.
All right, let's see. Let's do a big shout out here for our super chat. Can you make a new course on rental properties for some of the new landlords? They are driving some of us renters nuts. Well, I can tell you, we'll pull that up after Lisa gets out, but we'll sidebar this and we'll talk about what's happening in the rental market. Any more questions, Joe, for Lisa before we let her get out of here? Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, Lisa.
Good
job.
All right. Keep in touch with us. Keep fighting the fight, and we'll hope to hear from you again.
Yes, thank you so much. Keep doing the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you so much. Take care. Okay.
You too.
All right. I think I warned her, John, not to look at the comments and questions. People can be people can be tough, man. I was having a conversation with a guy that was giving me some advice. He may even be listening. Benjamin. He was actually a live caller 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about LinkedIn. And he's like, "Man, you really need to do more with your LinkedIn profile." And I was like, "Yeah, I would love some advice." So we kind of connected, and he gave me some pointers. And I said, "But what are the comments like in LinkedIn? Are they anything?" He said, "No, they're nothing like YouTube, because LinkedIn, it's your job, and it's a professional, like they're real pictures up there, their real job, their, company they work for, their position."
Right.
And YouTube, we have a lot of people that, they have some alias, and they love to, give us all a hard time. But hey, I welcome it. But anyway, John, It's you and me, brother.
Yeah. So now that we're back to real estate, huh?
We're back to real estate. So yeah, I know we've got a couple real estate questions here. Let's see. We'll just cover some of the things that she couldn't. Let's pull up a couple of these comments. All right. Unemployment rate in the United States increased to 4.3% in July from 4.10% in June of 24. Unemployment rate in the United States averaged 5.69% from 1948 until 2024. What do you think he's trying to say here, John?
I don't know. That we're in good shape, but the unemployment's heading up. Job losses are coming hot and heavy, especially around here. I know there's, if you watch Danielle DiMartino, she covers, she covers the unemployment stuff pretty hard. And I'm seeing it by me. I mean, there's 3 people I know that had jobs that have been laid off in the last 5 months. One was there 10 years, 7 years, and 5 years. And these are 3 people I know. When you start knowing people that are getting laid off, then it's catching fire.
I love these guys. We're going to bring them in. This is Daily Jobs Cut, dailyjobcuts.com. And I don't make any money from talking about these guys. In fact, I don't really know who they are, other than I love the work that they do. It's a very simple site. I pull them up every now and then. A couple of weeks ago, I pulled it up. The neat thing about this is they cover it by the day, and you can kind of go through this thing And I encourage you to do it. Pull it
I
up and
love
check it
the
out because
I love the roller skating rink in Emporia, Kansas. How bad is that?
yeah, how about it? I got a couple things highlighted. Memphis Area Transit Authority 200 layoffs. That was August 27th. That's today.
Yeah, it's
Here we
coming,
go.
man. It is. It's coming right
Yankee
now.
Candle Company. Yankee Candle. I mean, like one of the cheapest gifts in the world that you can give somebody that they appreciate and like. I mean, who doesn't like a nice Yankee candle? Their distribution operations, Deerfield, Massachusetts, 100 yesterday. Imagine that. Imagine
Yep.
yesterday, 100 pink slips, 100 people saying, hey, University of Pittsburgh School of Pharmacy program, 40% of its staff, right? How about this one? Tata Steel. This is crazy. 2,800 jobs.
Hey, Red Lobster on Sunday closed like 20 stores.
Yeah, look at this. Redfin. Do you know them?
Yeah, I've heard of them. CarMax, 400 plus.
400 plus CarMax. The car business is in the tank.
Yeah.
Wells Fargo, Denver area office, 70 people. Here's one that I thought was interesting. Stuart Haas Racing in the Charlotte area, up to 323. Now,
Wow.
you know anything about car races, NASCAR?
I know it's a hot sport.
But do you know why it's so, it's like a high dollar sport. And how did they get funded?
I don't know.
They get funded by advertisers that they wrap on their car.
Ah, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Right?
know
I mean,
it's
if
a
you
hot
look at
sport.
it, right. So if you're a well-known car racing company and you're laying people off, that must mean that companies, their advertising dollars have gone down the tubes. GoPro 15% or 139, GM
Yep.
1,000, salaried software and service employees. And then I just want to quickly talk about the closings here on the right-hand column. They talk about closing Shake Shack to close 9 underperforming stores. I mean, how much is a shake and a burger nowadays?
Right.
$50?
That's the problem right now, Todd, is there's too many of them, and they're all fighting for the consumer buck, and consumers are beat up and overwhelmed from it. And they're just starting to go cheap. And, that's why they can't keep up anymore.
What about this one, John? 63% of rural hospitals in Kansas
Wow.
at risk of closing.
That's government funded, though, right? I mean, I would think that would be just inflated in,
I mean, I don't know. I don't know, as far as, how that works. I know if you go to the hospital and you don't have insurance, what do?
Have a nice day.
Unless, no, we're not going to go there.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to go there. All right, let's bring it to real estate, John. Tell us what you see, what's happening in your area. Kind of remind people that are just coming in, what you specialize in.
Yeah, well, REO properties, foreclosures. Right now, everybody's in forbearance, which I mentioned earlier. The mortgage workouts have been going on for about 3 years plus now. Okay. And the thing is now is that the people are starting to lose jobs, and these mortgage workouts are 3-4 years old. You get to a point where you can't work them out anymore. Okay. They're out of gas, and that's going to be it. So then what? Then and that's what I think you're going to be seeing in the next year are all these old workouts are just, we can't do it anymore. We can't put it on the back end of your mortgage and lower your payment $300. And the thing is too, is that the insurance, the taxes, the HOA fees, the utilities are all up, 10 to 40% in the last 3 years. Even if you lower the guy's payment, he still can't afford it because the escrow account that he's carrying has already been padded $500, $600, $700 to account for some of this. So if you lower his payment, he's still upside down. So that's kind of what, the foreclosure stuff, that's where that's at. FHA delinquencies, I believe, are at 13% right now. I mean, that's pretty high, and that's really FHA. I mean, that's a 3.5% down loan. So if there's any tweak in this business, in the values, those guys will go upside down instantly. Then what? Now you got that problem brewing. The whole thing is just this gigantic bomb waiting to go off. And this should have been in a free market. A lot of these delinquencies would have been working out and going to foreclosure and moving on. But that's another reason why this is so inflated, because we're not in a free market. These properties are sitting on the sidelines, not being paid for, and those need to get through the system. All that feeds into why there's no inventory and the prices are too high.
You're talking about FHA loans at over 13% delinquencies, and how many people are close to being delinquent? I mean, when you look at, like you said, the cost of all of this. I want to pull up a video. Joe did find it. I had shared this. You weren't on with me, but you had sent it to me, and I want to kind of go over this. And can we get audio on that, Joe? Can you start it over and let's get some audio?
Just bleep the swear word.
Example of what you talk about, and then I was talking about. This is a house that we were evicting it today. Okay, they'd been in here for over 4 years without paying. They'd done 2 modifications, and this is what's left of this house. I mean, look at this. It's like yeah, let's keep them in there for 4 years, meaning they haven't paid in probably 5.5 years. And in the end, this is the way these houses are coming back. Everything's shit, yard shit, the whole deal. Anyways, hope to see you soon, man.
And there's another one. Do we have the clip of the inside, the one that he went inside on? I think we do have it up there. Let's take one more, and then John, I want you to explain what was going on.
Hey Todd, inside this house, this is the one that's been, this is the one that was evicted yesterday, and they were in it I've had it 4 years in my inventory. They did 2 mods, couldn't rescue it, that's where it's at. Show you the condition of this place, just to kind of give you an idea of what a laugh it is with these properties that, we're sitting here keeping them in these properties when in reality we should have been, probably needs windows. I had an interesting thing I wanted to show you downstairs. Show you the bathroom. This is what we're left with. Basically a house that needs complete rehab from top to bottom. But in the basement, show you a quick reason why I get so aggravated with how this, our government operates, because this house here, okay, this is all caving in. This is all a flat roof above this that hasn't been maintained, and the occupant here was putting buckets to collect the water that's coming through because he doesn't have the money to maintain the property and fix it. Here's the kitchen. More excitement here. Yeah, good stuff, man. A kitchen that's basically needs to be, complete renovation. This whole house, nothing's been maintained in here whatsoever for years and years. So, anyways, I'm looking forward to next week. Talk to you soon, bud.
John, is this what you see? This is what you see all the time.
Happening all over. I just got another one out a little farther west and trashed, completely trashed, and it's just the way it's going, and some of these too, they're, a lot of these are zombie, if you've ever heard the term zombie properties that are sitting vacant for years, and I go to the neighbors, I'm like, hey, when did this guy leave, and they're like, oh, last we saw him was 3 years ago. It's like, well, why is this just sitting here? Illinois is the judicial state where you got to go through the process, but 3 years, come on, the guy's gone, confirmed. Let's move these through. But it's kind of like the regulation thing. It's like everything's regulated to all heck. Everything. Down to just going and getting something at Walgreens. It's all regulated to where when you walk on it, or you feel like they stole your coat. Just to get stuff done. These cities. I've got a city out here that I got a notice the other day, the vacant property. Anytime we have a vacant property, they come out and they inspect it. They send he's not even a home inspector. He's a guy who's 20 some years old. He works there and he brings a checklist and a pen, and I pay him $700. Obviously the bank pays it, but I mean, what is that for? And then, and we have to pull permits anyway. So what's the, it's just insane, man. The being processed part of this is killing everything, and I'm, it's like, if you could put those numbers up for the real estate that I gave you, those 2 sheets.
John, let me ask you a question about that inspector. So with their checklist for the bank, I mean, what do they want to do? Rehab these properties?
Well, the banks have been rehabbing them because, it's like, we need inventory. So that's that's kind of what they're doing now, is like, well, we need inventory for buyers who don't, who want to buy homes that can't fix stuff. So now we're rehabbing stuff,
They're going to gut that house. They're going to gut that house.
They're going to fix that whole house. The one I just showed. We did the scope of work on it. So it's going to start repairs here in the next 3-4 weeks. The whole thing. It's crazy.
What's that going to cost?
Probably, I think I saw the numbers on $110,000.
$110,000.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, you're going to spend, I mean, I don't, well, we can look at your numbers. I mean, this is something
That's
have
inflation.
Done
That's
for years.
more inflation.
Yeah. I mean, what's going to happen is they're going to spend more money than they think. And it's going to be terrible work. And they're not going to get the price that they want for it. And the neighbors are going to tell them just about what that house was like. I mean, are we making a mistake by not evicting people? I mean, what is
Absolutely.
Where's the fine line?
Well, I know. It's like, oh, John, you must be a bad guy. You want these. No, I mean, work with them, but not for 4 years, not for 3 years. Okay. I mean,
they clearly weren't taking care of the house.
No, and none of them are. None of these people are taking care of these homes. They get the mod and they just breathe easy. The bushes are overrun. They're just trying to stay afloat. They need a place to stay, because what are they going to do? Sell it and go rent? A lot of these people stay in them because they can't afford rent. A lot of these guys, when we evict them, they're like, well, where am I going to go? And I don't blame them, But
they're banking money. They're banking money. They're banking money. I mean,
I don't know if they are.
I mean, some of them are. I mean, some of them are banking money. I know some of them.
I know some of them are. Yeah, for sure. Some of them are. No doubt about it.
I mean, here's the thing. If you're living in a house, you're in forbearance for 4 years, you're going to leave. You're not going to stay there.
Right.
You have zero incentive to fix anything. And this is what happens. And I've watched this hundreds and hundreds of times. What happens is, the people know that they're going to leave, so they're going to kick it as far as they can. They're going to stay there because they're going to avoid paying rent. A lot of them, they can't pay. There are some that can't pay, but a lot of them can. They're banking their money, and they're saying, I'm not going to fix that. I'm not going to it's not my house anymore. At the end of the day, I'm going to be leaving it. So, my credit's already shot. I'm going to live here, and I'm just going to let the thing fall down around me. And that's what happens.
Totally.
And what people say, it's so sickening. They say, well, there's equity in a house. There ain't no equity in that house.
No, there's not anymore.
But here's the thing. They say that real estate is an asset, that it appreciates. It doesn't appreciate. It falls apart. A house falls apart around you. You have to constantly spend money on a house. If you don't, it looks like this. This is a result of not spending any money on your house for many, many, many years, right? The roof's going to go bad.
I go back to, and I mean, I kind of told you that before. I was going to be on the show a couple weeks ago, and I was looking at some of my numbers for, the foreclosure amount of units I do foreclosure wise. And in 2020, I did from 07 to 2020, I was doing 55 a year, 55 units. And in 2021, when the COVID hit, it dropped to like 15, and it's been 15 ever since. Well, normally, if you're going to stop that, it'll taper off. It doesn't just fall off a cliff, and that tells me that, but we're still getting properties, but we're not kicking anybody out, and that's kind of the problem with it. And that's why I think, when after this election, I think there's a lot of pent up, stuff going on that, I don't care who inherits this. So I don't care who you vote for. I'm not siding with anybody, but whoever gets this is going to be a disaster. I mean, it's almost like, being the captain of the Titanic, before you hit the iceberg is one thing, but being the captain of the Titanic after it hits the iceberg, that might be worse, and that's what's going to happen here. And I don't care who gets in, because it's going to be a mess when all this stuff starts falling apart, because we got all these properties pent up, people are living in, not paying. I mean, they're almost mad at you when you go to evict them. They're like, what is this? I have my rights. It's like, okay.
Hey, John, what do you think of this comment from TJ? TJ, come on, man. What the heck? What kind of
I don't know, I
comment is this?
guess. I mean, I am going to have a glass of wine when I get out here, so I don't be a drunk, whiny, rich old guy. White guy. Anyways. They put those numbers up, though. I want to show those numbers and ask him if he can put those side by side. If he can somehow get them side by side.
Yeah, he's gonna be a minute for that.
All right.
I want to pull up.
Todd, did you see 56,000 purchase contracts canceled in June?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, that's a pretty big number. Why do you think that is?
Just people are, can't do it. I think everybody's scraping into these homes, and then they're looking at it going, man, I don't know if I can pull this off, and then the job insecurity starting to filter down. I just want to, be safe here and don't do anything crazy. And I think, and kind of with these numbers I'm going to show you, that's what I'm seeing over the last year, because the jobs, it's like they say the recession started last year sometime. And I think now people are starting to see it up front, knowing people that get laid off, things like that.
Do you know Lance Lambert? Do you know the name?
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, Lance Lambert, he's been a journalist, a reporter. He worked for Realtor.com. He has his own company now called Resi Club. And he is, grabbing a whole. We're kind of he's a work in progress. I like Lance. He's still a little more. I'm trying. What's that?
Didn't you have him on?
Oh yeah, and I'm having him on again. And we just podcasted again. And I kind of feel like he's getting to the truth. I feel like he's gonna get cleansed of mainstream media. The narratives that are pushed all the time, but he is coming out with great data. I think he's moving in a really good direction. And I said to him, Lance, how do you come up with your data based on, lagging data, what's being told by real, the NAR, the stats, the multiple listing service. He said, Todd, I'm looking and coming up with my data and my projections based on inventory, active inventory. And active inventory across the country is starting to skyrocket. Now, obviously, it's happening in other areas more than some areas.
Right.
But it is going up. And with that is a lot of price reductions. Right. In fact, there's a lot of There's a lot of sellers that are now taking their house off the market because they're frustrated because they didn't sell it at the price that they were wanting to get. And they're saying, well, I'll just take it off the market. Well, guess what? If you think it's going to get any better in the spring, it's not.
Right.
All right. Tell us what we're looking at here.
All right. So left side, this is Kane County, DuPage County, Cook County. This is just a 2-month picture. From 6/1 to 8/31/20. The left one is 2023. Okay. Down at the bottom left, sold primary property summary, 20,386 units. Okay. If you look at the 2024 one, sold property summary for the same 2 months this year, 12,376. I mean, what is that? 40% fall off in units sold. Okay. But more interesting to me is if you look at the 2023, 50 to 990, 99,999, 446 units. Okay. If you look at 2024, 50, 999, it's more than half, cut in half. And all those stats, those 6 numbers from 100 to 149, 151, all those in a row are all huge drop-offs from 1 year to the next year. Okay. This includes Chicago, all that. So those numbers are falling hard. But if you look down at the 700, 800, those numbers like 700, 650 drops off to 450, substantial drop, but not what's happening with the cheaper stuff. And keep in mind, Todd, the rates were probably what, almost 8 a year ago? And now they're 6.4. Where's the demand? It's because it's not rate driven anymore. It's price driven. They just can't do it anymore. And the insurance, like I said, insurance, taxes, HOA, it's turning these payments into $5,000 a month for a basic home, and they just can't do it anymore. And I believe truly that you'd need that rate to come down to probably 4. I mean, you'll have people buy as it comes down. You definitely will, but people just can't afford it. They still can at these prices. And I think now that's why the prices are next. Those are going to start coming down because this interest rate game, well, we need a lower interest rate. That's not going to pull a ton of people out of the woodwork because it isn't now, is what I'm saying.
Well, the interest rates, let's talk about those for a minute because, there's a lot of, one of the things that we spoke with Lance is the projections for the mortgage interest rates over the next couple of years going into 2026. And they're not saying that mortgage rates are going to drop that much in the next 2 years. I mean,
I don't think
they're
they
not
will
projecting. And what we're seeing now with the rate cuts are kind of baked in to the Fed doing, cuts in September, at least in September. And it's split down the middle 50-50 on, what the financial analysts, the economists are saying as far as will it be a quarter of a point or a half a point here in September, a Fed rate cut. And
right.
I think the mortgage rates are already baked in. So you're exactly right. And to your point, it's not interest rate driven because builders are buying down to 5.5%
Right.
mortgage rates, and that's not doing anything for them.
Right.
There's still, builders out there incentivizing agents with 8% commissions and things like that to try and lure them or get them to lure their buyers into, and it's still not working. So
Wow.
and here's what I'm hearing loan officers do, which is really upsetting. This is really upsetting. Loan officers are already saying, guys, get ready to refinance your loan,
Oh yeah.
your mortgage.
Too.
This is disgusting.
Yeah. Ready to roll.
It's
Yep.
disgusting because let me warn you guys, you need to look at the cost of refinance because a lot of people will never recoup that refinance cost.
Right.
You have to look into the expense. Your amortization schedule starts over. You're now paying more interest. If you've been in your house 3, 4, 5 years, and whatever, and you're thinking, you refinanced the house already to absorb your credit card loans, a couple years ago, and you're at 8%. So you already did that. A lot of people are refinancing their mortgages at higher rates just to get rid of the credit card debt. So we're seeing that. And now they're going to be enticing you and encouraging you to refinance again. Right. So the money that you're spending in refinancing fees, you're taking a big chunk and of your money and just throwing it away. You have to look at what is the difference that note is going to make you. At what point should you refinance? And what you're gonna save a month versus what you have to come out of pocket to refinance. And then how long are you going to stay there and see if it's even worth it? In a lot of cases, it's not, because a lot of the people that want to refinance are already wanting to get out of their house. We're seeing the remorse is through the roof.
Oh yeah.
They're like, as soon as I can get out of this house, I want to. So they're like, if I could save $50 a month or $60 a month, I'll refinance. They're spending a lot of money and they want to sell as soon as they can. So you just have to be mindful. And I'm sorry if you're a loan officer listening to this, but I just think it's too soon, guys, to be going for the going through for the juggler here and telling
Right.
people and hitting social media at the time when people are so vulnerable because
Right.
they, are so financially desperate that you're going to convince them to spend more money to refinance their house that they just bought 2 years ago.
And Todd, a couple things for you. It's like builder sentiment down since September of 23. Okay. They're struggling to sell this stuff. And they're like you said, it's kind of like when they came out and they said, oh, we're going to give $25,000 to first time buyers. Builders are already doing that. I mean, there's probably 50 grand cooked into that, but in their rates that they're dropping, because most of the stuff's 400,000 or 500,000. So, I mean, that's already there, and then it's like the 818,000 jobs that got adjusted down. I mean, what is that all about? Does any of this information even close to being realistic? I mean, I've never seen these adjusted up. I know that. And I think there's like 15 out of 20 of the last months they've been adjusted down. I mean, the whole thing's just this. I mean, you can't take any of that, you can't use any of that information into what you're doing. And that's why I like that job thing. And that's why the unemployment, the unemployment's still good. You're starting to see this stuff leak through the cracks. And eventually it's going to be a storm,
There is no sector, in my opinion, that is insulated whatsoever from what I believe we're going to see over the next, 18 months, 12 to 18 months. Professor Hankey, he was on the Economic Advisory Council to Ronald Reagan. I mean, the guy's been in economics forever. In fact, he's at Johns Hopkins and class just started, but I did catch him today for a podcast. And we were talking about exactly this. I mean, a recession is almost impossible. He follows the money supply. And one of the things that he said was, the Fed, and by the way, interestingly enough, Jay Powell is not an economist. And he's
an attorney, right?
Yeah, he's an attorney. And prior to him, it was 40 years before we had a non-economist heading the Federal Reserve. And what he was talking about is we're not paying attention to the money supply. And he was talking specifically to what's called M2 money supply. And the M2, the bulk of the M2 is basically consumers' money. What you have in your bank account, what you have in coin, in dollars. And he's saying that there's been a contraction of that money supply really since 2022. So we had the influx, the boom, where, we watched savings accounts go to highest numbers, historical numbers during the lockdown. And basically now it's all been depleted, all been sucked away. And not only do we have a lack of money supply, consumer money supply, is we have a debt supply. And what you can watch is as we've had the contraction of money supply, and he said it's only been, I think, 4 or 5 other times in history since 1913, since the Federal Reserve's inception, that we've had a contraction of money supply. And it's mostly years and years and years ago. Mm-hmm. One was the Great Depression. But what happens, and it's so easy to watch if people want to talk about, doom and gloom and things like that. Like, are you just talking doom and gloom? No, this is factual. You can find this data. We're having a contraction in the M2 supply, money supply. Consumers don't have money. At the same time, well, what happens when we go from a lifestyle of where we think things are really good and we start spending a lot of money, and then all of a sudden inflation hits, it sucks all your money away, and then you have done things like bought a house or other things that you've committed yourself to, expensive car loans. Well, what happens is the transition is the money supply is being contracted. At the same time, debt is being increased because now people are out of money and they're using debt to finance their life, their lifestyle. Yep. Well, what happens when the debt is skyrocketed and you don't have any access to more debt? What happens is you stop spending money. And that's what we're seeing now with all of these closings and the layoffs. So what's happening is, because what we were talking about in the podcast, and I'm not giving it all away, there's plenty to listen to, but what we were talking about is it really isn't a left or a right thing. This is this is
Right.
mistakes that are made by monetary policymakers that at the end of the day, they're not looking at the supply of money. They're thinking that the only way to fix the economy is to raise and lower interest rates, the Fed
Right.
rate. And that has never worked. It
No.
didn't work right
Not gonna
before
work this time either. Right.
it didn't work in '08. They dropped the rates and we still imploded big time, the largest that we ever did since World War II.
Yeah.
Or since the Great Depression, it's so,
And
I think that
nobody talks about lowering the debt. Nobody. It's like, okay, we'll just keep inflating it. But sooner or later it comes home to roost. And it's like John McClane said, welcome to the party, pal. Me and you've been talking about this for a couple of years. And people do start to go, oh, you guys are just, I got one client of mine. He's like, you guys are just doomsayers, whatever. No, we're here. We're at the doorstep right now. And then after this election, I think it's all going to break loose. I mean, because everything's pent up because of the election.
I think the only ones that can say that this isn't a reality are either very wealthy people that are never affected by the ups and the
Right.
downs of the economy. It won't change their lifestyle one way or another. I mean,
Right.
if you have a ton of money, and I'm not blaming people that have it for having a ton of money. I mean, that's great, but it's a very small percentage of the population. What we have to, if you're commenting saying that these things aren't true, and you're okay with going to McDonald's and spending $25 for a Big
Right.
Mac meal, and it's not good for you. It's not like we're eating, food that is, the best for our bodies.
Right.
And if you can honestly look and say that you think the economy is doing well, I don't know who you are. I mean,
Right.
I don't
Right.
understand who you are. You're in a position obviously that's benefiting by
Right.
the way things are
Irrelevant.
right now.
It's irrelevant to them. They
It
don't
doesn't
even look,
matter.
It's like this 2%, they want to get down to 2% on the inflation. It's like, well, where did that stupid number come from? And all the CPI, the PPI, the whatever, they got all these stats that they use to make everything look good, but it's trash. It's in the gutter right now.
It's kind of embarrassing.
It is.
I mean, when you look at something and people are convinced that this is a good thing, right?
Right.
If you look at it and you say,
You can't
okay,
talk about it.
we're at 2%, what you're looking at is year over year, right? So who could be proud of that? I mean, why would you be proud of a 2% increase year over year?
Right.
And we know that that's probably not even a practical number. If we saw prices double and skyrocket over the last couple of years, why we need deflation? We don't need disinflation. What
Right.
they're talking about year over year CPI is disinflation. We've taken a year over year number and we've disinflated that number. We've done nothing to the number that got us into trouble in the first place.
Right.
And we're not miraculously doing a fantastic, making that much more money.
Yeah.
I don't
And
get it.
him lowering rates, I don't care if it's 0.5%. You won't see any, you won't see movement from that for 6 months to 8 months before that'll even start. You'll even feel that. By then it'll be trashed. The whole thing is like, to me, he should have kept raising them, to be honest with you. And, we got to blow out some of the bad debts and the bad money that's out there, but they don't want to do that. They want to keep the thing balanced where everybody's happy. But it's not going to work.
Let's take a look at our poll again, Joe. Let's see what and Lisa was great. I mean, she really was, and I completely. I mean, I commend her for her courage to stand up and talk about what she's talking about because it's a hot topic. Is student debt predatory here? 692 votes. You guys, you can keep adding to that and cruise over to the poll. If you would, please give us your honest opinion. If you think student debt is predatory lending, 76% here, I can't imagine it changing much from that, says yes, 24% no. And it was nice that she agreed that, that we shouldn't just bail people out. One of the things that we talked about today with Hanky was entitlements, and it's a hot topic, man. And I think he said the only entitlement is that was in the Constitution was that a jury trial was the only entitlement. Other than that, there was no other entitlement. And but yet we've added all of these things, and I don't know if it helps people or not. I mean, do you think it's healthy for Americans when we're pounding them with entitlements, or should we be doing more and giving them encouragement and incentivizing them? Oh, I will tell you what, one of the things that he said that and I forget what government was he comparing it to? Was it Argentina? Where was he talking about as far as the Venezuela? Yeah. He said that in Venezuela they developed this system which is kind of cool. They only allowed the government to expand with the economy. So if the economy was expanding, the government could expand. And if it didn't, then it had to get rid of and cut costs and cut people, and it had to contract. What an incentivized system that is, where, and what he was saying was it's such a tragedy that, we get no say really when we're being taxed and they're just basically giving these entitlements out, and they're just taxing the working people more money that have no say. He said it's kind of like, theft. It's kind of like stealing from, people that have and giving it to people that have not. And there's certainly a lot of people that think that that's okay, obviously, because that's how we're allowing this stuff to continue. But very interesting. I didn't give a whole lot away on that one, but it's pretty hot, man. Steve Hanke was on fire, and I'm excited for you guys to hear that.
I just think
do you think it's good for people?
I just think it's become fashionable to just, we'll throw money at that, throw money at that, throw money at that problem. And this isn't like Democrat or Republican. This has gone on for quite some time now. And, they're all doing it. Let's just print some money and solve that problem. Just print some money and solve that problem. It's just, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But, it's like it's too much. It's we're printing all this money, and that's inflation, folks. It's like, the thing with the corporate gouging and all this stuff. You might have a little bit of that going on, but if these places don't compete, people go somewhere else. They can't just raise the prices. I'm going to corporate gouge for a while, because they may shop you around and go somewhere else and never come back. So is some of that true? Maybe, but you got to think outside of the box on that. Like, no, they're not gonna. They don't want to lose their customers either.
Let's pull up some more comments here. Here we got Charles. Man, I've missed you. I haven't heard from you in a little bit. Appreciate your super chat here. Did you hear what California is doing? Illegal immigrants will be able to buy homes, no monthly payment, no interest on loans, on taxpayer dime. John, I have not heard that. Have you?
I did hear that, and.
Yeah.
Why not, right? It's just, let's go get some money out of the printing press and let's do that now. And, you got a homeless population out there, and we're going to do that. I don't know. It's completely insane at this point. It really is.
All right,
it doesn't shock me.
Yeah. We already talked about that one. Joe, maybe you could pull these up here. See what we got here. There we go. Student loan debt's the biggest asset of the U.S. government. No one forced anyone to take on student debt. It should not be forgiven. So, Callie, appreciate your comment on that. Joe, let's hit a couple of these. Student loan debt, the way it's structured, is unlawful. These students should be allowed to file for bankruptcy just like any other debt and take a hit, but it should not be forgiven. I agree with this.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
Completely agree. Thanks for that, R&R. Overjoyed here. A graduate degree was only $38,000 with books in the 1970s. Now, we made a lot less money back then as well. But I think, when we're comparing, going back in history, and we've covered this before, a lot of households only had one person working outside of the home. And I say outside of the home because being a stay-at-home mom is a very hard job, or being a stay-at-home parent. Sometimes, the breadwinner was mom, and the dad stayed home.
And they made that work too. They
made
made
it
that
work.
work, because they weren't stretched to the max, taxed all heck and everything else that they're getting. I have clients I've been putting into homes in the last 6 months, and they're young, 28, 29, and they're both got to work full time, overtime, just for their little house they're going to buy. It shouldn't be that way. And that's why, to me, we need a correction somehow, some way.
We didn't have McMansions. We didn't have
1,200 square
McMansions.
feet. That's what I grew up in.
Yeah, 1,200, 1,400 square foot or less. And they were 3-bedroom houses with 1 bathroom. We shared a bathroom. Everybody learned to get along. And, and it was great because, we all gathered around the living room. I mean, it was, look, it's, a lot of my friends from high school, their parents are still in the houses from that I would go over in high school. And now we treat those houses as starter homes. We're constantly pushing people. America, we're just consumers, man. We're taught to be consumers. It's like all we do is we work hard, we spend all our money, we're in debt. We keep being, told that, we have to be better. We have to have better things. The quality of life is being sacrificed. The stress levels are through the roof, and it's really wearing on our population. I mean, we're definitely more angry than we've ever been. The divide, the hate divide is just extreme. I've never seen it this bad. We can't even disagree politically. You're bullied. You're called, names. You're cut off. They come after you. There's so many things that it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, it is. It is insane, man. It is. People are off the charts, pissed off.
Todd never had student debt. Can't understand. Well, that's true, Charlton. It's actually, I did go to college for a semester and a half.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, and I didn't have debt. I paid for it.
There was no debt. You paid as you went.
Yeah, I didn't have anybody paying it for me either. And it's funny because at the time that I was going to school, I already had my business, and I actually went to college for business law, or I was taking business law classes. And the professor was talking about, the formation of the different kinds of companies, the difference between a subchapter S, a C, a LLC, blah, 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 limited liability partnerships and stuff like that. And I'm going, my beeper's going off. I have people in the field. I've got phone calls to make and people that want estimates. And I was like, man, this is crazy. I'm sitting here. I'm losing money sitting in this, learning this stuff. And I remember that I went out with a buddy of mine to lunch, and I just decided afterwards, he drove and we got back to the parking lot, and I just decided I was going to leave. And I can remember my mom a couple weeks later, she's like, have you been going to school? I'm like, no. And she's like, well, what's going on? I'm like, I quit. I'm sorry. Yeah. Don't rip a page out of my book, students. I'm not encouraging you to not go to college. But I'm very thankful that I didn't, and that I didn't come out with $200,000 in debt. I mean, there's more to this story, but I'll save it for another day.
Nice.
I was actually, I was on a path to go into the Marine Corps and from high school, and I was living with my grandparents and my mom, and my grandmother got very sick, and she was very dear to me. And I actually went to work to be able to stay home and go be there for her during, those final days. But the only regret that I have in life is I can't say that I wore a uniform. I have the utmost respect for everybody that did, and I should have been there. I have friends of mine that we were going to go in together, and they went in and have done great things. But it would have been a complete different life-changing path. And, for me, and who knows, I may not be talking to you guys tonight.
I've seen another side of you now, Todd.
What's that? I heard everybody say, yeah, you're going to be one of those crazy Marines. And that's true. I was. I wouldn't have, I was dead set on that. There was no other branch in my mind. So,
hey, what are you seeing with rentals right now?
What's that?
What What are you seeing with rentals right now?
Yeah, we're seeing that rental properties are sitting on the market. They're having a hard time getting the rents that they once did. I mean, it was funny because if you put a house on the market to rent, it was almost like a for sale property. They were multiple applications, and you would have an open house, and it would be flooded with people, and they were paying ridiculous prices. Of course, the landlords loved it, but we're seeing that strongly soften. Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, it's softening a little bit. That's why I was asking. I'm seeing it kind of. I mean, the lower end stuff, 2,500 and under, moves pretty quick. But yeah, I think that's and I think too these Airbnbs, I think, are starting to question whether or not they want to stay in that line of work. Because the regulations are coming down on those. That could be more inventory possibly. But I just think you need something to crack here, and I think it's coming. But, agree.
Well, I mean, let's face it. Do you think we're going to have a recession?
Absolutely. I think we're already in one. We just don't know it yet.
But we haven't seen it.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing it. I mean, I'm
talking about a real recession.
Oh, I mean, yeah, where the unemployment is on first front page news and stuff. We're not there yet. Yeah.
I mean, the foreclosure, the store closings and things like that. This is just the beginning.
Right.
It would be the first. If we don't, it will be the first time in history that we haven't had a recession, and that we could, after what we just went through, right? This boom cycle, this overinflated bubble cycle. So when we're talking about getting back to what you're saying, Airbnb owners are wealthy. For the most part. And I'll tell you why. Because most landlords that jump into the rental market, and I have been one for 25 plus years, you buy a house to rent on a long-term basis. You can finance that property and get a long-term tenant, and that is your collateral to your loan.
Right.
Having a lease. With an Airbnb or short-term rental, every day is a new tenant. You don't know what you're going to get, for one. But number two, you spend on average about $30,000 to $35,000 putting furniture and everything that house needs, from a pizza cutter to a wine opener, bottle opener, right? If you stayed in Airbnb, I mean, they try and outdo the posh, right? Well, what's happening is these people think that they thought that this is the best thing ever. People were traveling, they were staying in Airbnbs, they weren't staying in hotels, they could put their whole family in there, it took the cost down. What they didn't realize is that all the while these companies are raising their prices. They're the ones making the money. They're getting hit with insurance. They're getting hit with HOAs shutting them down. They're getting hit with property taxes. They're refinancing properties now. Their properties are coming up for refinance on their commercial loans. They're going to be in, double the interest rate that they had.
Right.
What's happening is these are smart people. They're saying this isn't such a good deal at all.
Right.
I'm not making any money. I got to clean it. I'm subjected to reviews. And they're going to, at the minute that they get squeezed even more, we're going to see a flood of Airbnb or short-term rental properties hit the market that is going to be an astronomical wave, I believe.
Yeah. And I know people that bought them low down and said they were going to live in them, I mean, those are out there too. Back in the cheap money, 2.5% interest rate, boom, let's buy a house and Airbnb it, But that's,
100%.
That's what I mean. Now the taxes again, the HOA, all that stuff's going to start piling on. And then it's like, all of a sudden my rents are down, people aren't coming out as much. And I'm reading that too, that, travel's like taking a little bit of a dip, so we'll see. That's what I mean. There's all these things going on that
we haven't seen it yet.
It's like, I haven't seen it full tilt, but because real estate, I always look at the jobs. How's the jobs? When you see goofy stuff like, oh, sorry, we lost 818,000 jobs by accident, lost it in the couch cushions. It's like, that tells you how manipulated that is, and the unemployment's rising. And I've been following the jobs just around me, and, stuff's closing, restaurants closing, just out of nowhere, places that have been there a while too.
Yeah, we have somebody here that commented, where'd it go? Airbnb. They have Airbnbs. They're killing it. Good for you. That's awesome.
Good.
Peter. Killing it, and I own them free and clear. I mean, what did I say? A lot of the Airbnb owners are rich.
Provide it, yeah.
I mean, you're wealthy people, right? So you have these Airbnbs, and you have money, so you're able to put $30,000 worth of furniture and stuff that people can mess up and puke on. But what's going to happen is, you're going to get to a point to where they're killing it. But when a recession comes, I hope it's a very expensive Airbnb that the people that are staying there won't be affected by the economy. Because the minute that they are, we're going to see Peter back on the show, and he might be saying, "Man, I'm selling all my Airbnbs."
Thanks for the advice.
I hope not, though, buddy. I hope you continue to do well. I truly do. I want people to do well, and I think more people need to think about doing well. TJ just says here unemployment 15 to 20%, and I think that's a funny emoji. So if we get 15 to 20%, we'll be in Great Depression 2.0.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think 10% is a big number.
Definitely.
But, TJ, you're cutting it up tonight, aren't you? Let's see what else we got here. All right. How can unemployment be high when housing is hitting all-time highs? Please explain.
It's not. That's the problem. It's not. The unemployment isn't high in terms of how we're looking at it, but it's on its way. It's not there yet. It's kind of like what you just said, Todd. It's not there yet, but it's coming. It's going up. Places are getting in trouble, cutting costs, cutting people. It's like I said earlier. I know 3 people on their jobs for multiple years, all 3 of them, and they're laid off right now in the last 5 months. It's like when you start seeing it around you, then it's coming. But yeah,
just 2 weeks ago, I could pull it up now. I mean, I know we're getting to the finish line here, but 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, I pulled up the data for multiple counties in the state of Maryland, and I have in the Bright MLS system, I have a access to multiple states, though we're only licensed in Maryland. But in many markets, we're seeing 30 to 35%, and these are hot markets. These are Maryland markets. 30 to 35% of the houses, I just pulled it up 2 weeks ago, that are active listings had at least one price reduction. We're seeing days on the market skyrocket. What he's saying here, the houses hitting all-time highs. This data, I don't know how else to explain it to you, that it's manipulated.
Right.
The data is skewed. Some say it's screwed. But here's the thing. When you're looking at reporting that is a month and a half old, you're not looking at accurate reporting. Things change. Real estate is a slow-moving target, yes, but the bottom line is a house is not fungible. This is one of the greatest benefits that mainstream media can plaster out there, because they can just tell it to you and you believe it. Their house is not fungible. A quarter is fungible, or a ounce of something is fungible, because you have an ounce of something, they can weigh the same and be priced the exact same. A house is not fungible. You can't compare 2 houses right next to each other and say that the price has necessarily gone up. Condition is everything. Seller contributions are not considered. Concessions and sale prices. We're seeing, sellers now making $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 repairs on houses that weren't happening 2 years ago. That's a price correction, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Not only that, but prices are coming down. Yeah. And sellers are yanking their house off the market because it's not selling. Why isn't it selling? Because the public thinks that it's overpriced now.
Right.
What's pushing the narrative of price increases is the National Association of Realtors, by their backward-looking data, real estate agents, a lot of them, right? The buyers are slamming their foot down and saying, hell no,
Yeah.
it's not worth it. I'm not giving you that for your house. Now, some people are falling into the hands of a real estate agent that says, hey guys, you ready to buy a house? Yeah, well, we better give them what they want or more because you might not get it.
Right.
All the agent has to say to them is, well, we got a multiple offer situation here, guys. And they go into a full-fledged panic mode. It could be a multiple offer situation where everybody's $20,000 less than the asking price.
Yeah.
But as soon as they put that in, the exuberance takes over your intellect, and you want to give everything away because you just want to win the house. Now, look, I'm not telling you don't buy a house, but we got to wake up here, people. We need to look at our debt. We need to look at what's going on in America. You need to look at your bank account. If you're asking what you need to do to qualify for a loan and you're stretching for that, you have to reconsider whether it's the right time to buy.
Right.
If you have $5,000 in your bank account and you're asking your seller to pay for all of your closing costs or 6% of your closing costs, and you're at the max with two borrowers and you're borrowing at the top of your limit because you just want to know, what can I qualify for? Well, I'm looking at that $220,000 house and that's not really hitting it for me. Can I go to 260? Oh, well, I was qualified for 300 at 60% loan debt to income ratio. Guys, we have got to wake up.
Todd, I'll tell you what, too. You said that the buyers are starting to go, no, I'm not paying that. It's too much. A lot of them are just broke. They're like, we can't buy a house, honey. Can't afford it. You know?
Let me tell you what's going on. And are you hearing this too? My lawyer called me up today, and, it's interesting. We've got a great relationship. He bills me and I pay it. What a wonderful relationship that is. But anyway, sometimes he even listens to my podcast. Sometimes I even send him some clips too. But anyway, we've got this disconnect on this mess. I mean, it is a freaking mess. I had a listing appointment on Sunday, which I don't take many listings, but very few referrals. Will I handle myself personally? This one I'm going to handle myself personally. And the first thing she says to me when we sit down is she said, I don't want to pay $40,000 like the last time I did when I sold a house with you, Todd. And I said, well, wait a minute. Now that covered the buyer's agent too. But this is somebody that is very close to me. And, anyway, so, she said, well, what is this commission deal all about?
I'm getting that
that
too.
I'm hearing in the news. Right. And let me tell you something. It's a freaking train wreck.
It
and
is.
who's making it a train wreck? Or agents are making it a train wreck.
Agreed.
The agents and
Totally.
brokers are making this thing to be worse than what it really is. They
Right.
don't understand it. They are confused, and it is a disaster.
And I think that's going to hurt this market too for a while. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing. Talking to my attorney today, he said, let me pick your brain on something. I said, wait a minute, let me start my meter. I'm going to bill you for this kind of stuff. He said, here's the scenario. A buyer signs a buyer agency agreement with the buyer, which is now
Right.
the way
Required.
it works. It's required. A lot of states, we've always done it here in Maryland. But they put a percentage in for the buyer's commission that they're going to pay if the seller does not, or
Right.
the listing broker does not offer anything up. And they put a fee in there. And then all of a sudden, the offering from the seller or the listing broker is more than the fee that they have in a buyer agency agreement. Well, let me ask you, John, what is your take on that?
Well, they told us.
What happens to the extra money?
Well, yeah, I don't know what happens to that. I know we can't take it. If we're getting
Why
2.5
not?
and the guy's offering 3, can't take it.
Why
According
not?
to our paperwork in Illinois. But who gets it? Seller, I don't know.
What would happen? What would happen if you went to your buyer and said, "Hey, they're offering me 2.5. Can I have it? Can you
Well,
take it then?"
You mean if? What do you mean if the seller's offering that?
if the seller's offering a
You mean
percentage
double
that's
dip.
higher than yours, then what you're charging, are you going to tell them no, or are you going to ask your buyer if you can make the extra money?
I don't, according to our paperwork, which is what I'm working off of, if I sign up a buyer at 2.5, that's what I get. If he's offering 5% to me as a buyer agent, can you go ask him? I suppose, but we're not supposed to. That I do know.
I don't know who's supposed to, but I commissions are negotiable. So, I mean, I take it from a standpoint that it's negotiable. But anyway, that's just one of what you said.
Yeah, it's a
and
mess.
What everybody else says is something different. Everybody says something different because the fact is they don't know.
Right.
Nobody knows. But I will tell you one thing. If you said to a buyer, sign this buyer agency and this is the fee, and you said to them, I'm going to show you this house, but they're not offering you anything, and you're going to have to pay it, we've already seen where buyers are like, I ain't paying you nothing.
Right. Yep.
If I got to pay the commission, it ain't happening because I don't have it.
Yeah, guys.
So yeah, commissions are negotiable, but you guys, look, you got to open your eyes and open your ears. You got to talk to your agents. You got to make sure now more than ever, you got to have these transparent conversations about how people get paid, and you better learn how to do it. Because I'm not saying you, John, I'm talking to agents because you're a broker. I'm a broker. I mean, we have to deal with this with our agents, and we also have to deal with it the other side. But this thing is a mess. And let me tell you something,
now, for sure.
And there has been articles that are posted where these attorneys are sitting back salivating, probably listening to this podcast, saying, "Man, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get my hands on the next lawsuit." Right. I mean, this thing's ridiculous, but you're right. It's gonna change the industry. It's gonna make a lot of agents go away. But guys, what we do want you to understand is commissions are 100% negotiable. There's no flat fee. There's no flat rate, and it's always been that way. So, open up the line of communication. Hey, if you're in Maryland, we want to talk to you because everything's negotiable here. And John, I know John's the same way. Anybody in our broker network better be telling you that commissions are negotiable. There is no flat or average or customary or whatever. So you could take all this lawsuit business and put it in your pipe and smoke it. At the end of the day, I think it should be the same way that it's always been.
Right.
Negotiable.
Yeah, we shall see on all that.
I hear you, brother. What else you got, man? Let's see. Any final thoughts on the wrap up here of here we go. Isaac.
The real estate is, what is this one?
Isaac, I've been listening for a while saying the same stuff about the systemic housing collapse, but everything I hear from the Fed points to the opposite. Time to tell, man. As I said before on my show, if I am wrong and a year from now we're talking about the same conversation and we're not seeing prices really coming down, I'll say I was wrong. If things rebound and prices start going up, I'll be the first one to say, guys, it was an unbelievable, accomplishment that these guys made. And I'll be the first one to give them credit for whatever they want. I mean, I don't know what the credit would be. Well, things are less affordable and that you guys can't buy homes, but I'll congratulate them on inflating the prices to the point that nobody can afford one.
Nobody
will be able to buy anything. Isaac, if that's what you want, if what you want me to say is that we need higher home prices and that you need to run out today and spend all your money and go into debt for 30 years with every penny that you have and buy a house with no home inspections, if that's what you want me to say, you're listening to the wrong podcast.
Right. I agree. It's good listening to the Fed too.
Exactly. Right. The one that lowered rates for so long. Right. That we, Charles, I had a discussion with a realtor recently to help a friend, and I pretty much schooled her on the economy, homes, etc. The realtor even took notes. Send them to Sachs Realty's Tuesday night podcast. Charles. Thanks for that, buddy. Hey, I had a client of mine sent me he's not a client. He might be. I'd have to see if he signed buyer agency agreement, but we haven't looked at houses. We haven't gone out, so I haven't broken the rule. Or any laws here in Maryland. It's been a law that you have to have a agency contract. But anyway, or you have to have another disclosure, which is perfectly fine too. But he texted me a screenshot and said, "This is the realtor I fired 2 years ago." And he even may be listening tonight. He listens to our shows. But he said, here's her text to me saying, "You better buy now. Home prices are never going to drop and interest rates have improved and gotten better. So you better buy now."
Yeah.
There will be no middle class if Kloss and company get their way. The great reset is happening in real time, but very few people are connecting the dots. Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
Why would Fed cut rates if market is hot?
Correct. I agree. Oh, they're seeing the signs. That's what they're saying, that the labor market's getting soft. So there you go. But yeah, to me, they should raise them again. Let's
the question is it too late?
It might be too late.
It might be too late. They had to do it. They had to do it.
Like Harry Dent, the crazy, guy says, we need to blow out all this stale bad money and bad everything. And you don't, that's why he's always said, you got to have recessions to clean the deck.
Did you call Harry Dent crazy?
Well, he's definitely out there.
I love Harry Dent.
You have to turn the volume down when you listen to his podcast.
I love Harry Dent. He's I tell you what, it's interesting because people give him a hard rap, and I know you're not giving him a hard rap because he talks about a lot of truths, but he is a lot more animated than me. If you guys haven't seen any of our videos with Harry, people really enjoy him. We not too long ago, we have a video that's over 1 million, I think over 1,400,000 views. But what he says is so truthful. And Harry Dent, 1.5 million a month ago. But anyway, what he was talking about is this housing price correction, and what people are what they can't grasp is that we had home prices go back to 2003 prices in the 2008 housing crash.
Right.
So when we looked at from 2003 to 2006, 2007, 2006 was really the peak back in the GFC. What happened by 2008, 2009, home prices had gone back to 2003 levels.
Right.
So when he's talking about price reductions of 50%, I'm not saying that we're going to get there. But if you think about it, if we looked at the 2008 period, can you imagine if we went back to 2019 prices?
Right.
If we
only 5 years
next year, it would not take that much of a reduction. If we're looking at a stock market crash, what would look like a complete tragedy?
Right.
If we had a 50% reduction in some of these skyrocketed stocks, but it wouldn't take you back that far in time.
Right.
So when you're looking at the possibility of a housing correction crash, if we went back 3 years,
right, it's only what, 25%.
Prices,
yeah.
I mean, that's a big number.
Yeah.
That's a big number. And actually, Lance has the data. Some markets didn't go up 40%. They went up 80%. So in a 3-4 year period, home prices went up 80%. So when you look at areas like Houston, right, or parts of Arizona or Nevada, Miami, you start looking at some of these really overheated markets. That's where Harry Dent's kind of coming up with that. If we went back 5 years in pricing, we could be 50 to 80% in price reduction if we went back 5 years, like what happened in the GFC.
Right.
People don't want to say it's possible. I never count out the impossible. I think that a lot is going to be predicated on what you said, John, the job market. That's something we have to watch close.
Todd, it's like in 05, 08, 06, whatever, that all started in the South in those overheated markets again. And then it crept, it worked its way into the regular markets. I mean, Chicago's still solid, There was places, I think, like Pittsburgh that only dropped like 5% back in the GFC.
Yeah.
But that's because
Right.
it wasn't overheated, and they didn't
Right.
build a ton of stuff. And that's kind of like, that's what I look at too, because those markets are starting to fall apart down south. And that just, it's going to work its way up just like it did before.
North Carolina. Hey, you know what? You know why Pittsburgh didn't go up or crash that hard? Because it wasn't a bubble there. It wasn't a bubble. If you look back, and they talked about exuberance, there were articles that they started to publish back in 22 when they were trying to make, what the Fed was doing is the fastest and, steepest rate hikes in the history since the Federal Reserve. I mean, when you start looking at it, you go, they did come out with some articles that said the exuberance was creating this housing market bubble. You don't see any of those ads anymore. You don't see any of those, articles being published. You don't hear anybody talking about it because nobody wants to think of an economy as a bubble economy. They want to think of the economy as being resilient. But when it's leaked that 818,000 jobs were misreported, that's pretty bad.
Right.
When you're misreporting almost 1 million jobs and that's leaked out right before we have an election, I'm assuming it was leaked out. Why would we be looking at that? Why would that be
published? Why are we getting it now?
Why are we getting it now? But hello, guys. One of the biggest things that they said on my podcast over and over and over again is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics says that the job market, they just added 400,000, 300,000, 600,000. The jobs are they're out there. Well, we know that was misstated.
Right.
Yahoo Finance back in, I think it was January, published an article that said 419,000, I think is what it was. Maybe it was 438,000 something jobs were overstated in 2023. Right. Now we got 800,000, almost 900,000.
How is that possible? Yeah.
That's a lot of jobs to overstate.
Yeah, and every month they're revising these down. You just don't hear about it because it's not in the news. All you get is a good jobs report. You don't get the bad ones,
Yeah.
But hey, what do we know?
All right. What do we know? We're just a couple of whatever TJ
real
said.
Estate guys.
I'm not gonna repeat it, but whatever. Hey, look, man, I love you guys. Even when we don't agree, I'd love you for being on our show and contributing to our channel, comments, good or bad. We take them. I take them all. I appreciate your time. I know that you all have a choice of what you want to listen to or what you want to watch. And for those of you that choose to listen to us, we're building an amazing online community. And guys, I only have your best interest at heart. It's not, I think it's very counterintuitive to have a real estate broker, 2 of them, on the screen with you tonight that are telling you facts of reality. And we're in a commission-based environment. If I wanted to preach a different narrative, I would be on here telling you all that the housing market, you buy now because you're going to lose out. And if I believe that, I would be telling you that. So you have to look at, you either think that I'm 100% crazy, to come on and say the things that I say, or that I really do want people to be able to own houses, and we do want affordable houses, and we do want red tape cut, and we do want things. We want people to think about housing as a shelter, as a necessity of life that we can live. I always said when I went through houses, I did a lot of rehabbing of houses, not lipstick on a pig either, very quality rehabbing. And I always said, I wish this house could talk. I would go into a house that, was like John showed. And, obviously people went through hell. They went through torment. They were miserable. They were distressed. They were, houses see divorce. We see it, in our industry. We see people lose jobs. We see death of family members. They have to leave because they can no longer afford the house. This is a very personal business, dealing with the emotions of buyers and sellers and their motivations for why they buy and sell. But I always said that I wish a house could talk, because it would tell you about the kids having fun, the crying, the arguing, the hardship, the struggles, the triumphs, the ribbons, the trophies, the games, the friends, the families that came together on holidays. A house is a home, people. It is a home. It's meant to be a home. Right. Even if you're renting, it is meant to be a home. You should have good, affordable rental homes that are safe, that are, that you can relax and not have to worry. And we have gotten so far away from this with the pressures of putting people in places and taking every penny from them to achieve the dream that is a nightmare.
Right.
In America.
Not a dream in the end. In the end, it's just
we have
stress.
to get we have got to get back, people, to the purpose of it. And that's one of the things that I hope that this channel does, and I hope that that's one of the things that you pull away that I truly want for everyone out there. So anyway, John,
Todd, these are what we want right here, man. That's what we want right here.
That's right.
That's the dollar amounts we want. We want to get back to that.
Oh man, I tell you what. Oh, all right, guys. Well, John, I appreciate you, brother. Cruise on over to John's channel. He has a YouTube channel, and tell him he needs to start producing more. He's got some. He's a great guy, and you got a great message, man. And you're a straight shooter, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. But John's link is below in the show notes. Reach out to him if you're going to Chicago or anywhere in that market, and you don't reach out to him, you are making a big mistake. This is a good guy, and he cares about people. So,
all right, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And we'll be talking soon. And guys, thank you again for spending your Tuesday nights with us. If you haven't liked the video, you can let John and I know that you liked it by hitting that thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, I mean, you're going to hit the thumbs down. We'll take the good and the bad and your honesty. And certainly keep those comments coming. We love to hear from you. And guys, if you're in Maryland, we hope we're your number one choice. If you're anywhere else in the country, we hope that you first shop our amazing broker network. Agents all over the country. I think we have 70 or 80 agents now that are in our network. We're very strict with it. If you're an agent out there and you think that you may qualify or want to talk to us about being on it, go ahead and shoot me an email, and we will see you next time.
Take care, man.